Hi, Tessa.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. So, Tessa, in 2023 to 2024, you were elected as University of California, Santa Barbara's student body president.
Yes.
Where you were responsible for 21,000 students. Is that
24, I think.
24,000.
Yeah.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible. Can you just tell me a little bit about presidency? How did that work? How you got elected?
I was involved in student government for the 2 years before that I became student body president. And so when I came back from my gap year, I was going into my second year at UCSB. And the student body president at the time, she was Israeli. And her name was Yuval Cohen, like as Israeli and Jewish as you can get. And she hired me to work in her office. And within a couple of weeks of working for her, I was like, okay, I was never the student government kid. This was never going to be my thing. But I want this to be my thing. And I think that I could become the student body president. And I said this to my friends like a couple of weeks into working. They're like, Tessa, you just got here. Like maybe you should try working in the office first and see how well you do.
Right.
But I was very determined to be on that path. And so then my second year of student government, I ran in an election to be a senator for the College of Letters and Science. And I won that election. And so basically the way that elections work is that you campaign. Before it was that you were campaigning with a slate. And then my year, you all had to campaign independently. And so I was running and just hoping that I was going to get the majority vote. And I honestly didn't think that I was going to have an insane amount of competition. I was running though against three men, one of which, who was my greatest competitor, the runner-up. I only beat him by like 100 votes, very small margin. And he was also Jewish, but he was endorsed by Students for Justice in Palestine. And very quickly, the one thing that I wanted to avoid became kind of the sole focus of the presidential race, where it was about Israel. Mm-hmm. And if anything, this was kind of a premonition for what the year was going to look like, crazy, right? Because my entire presidency ended up being defined by it. And so, that's how I stepped into that role.
That's amazing. So I noticed that in your victory post, you were wearing a Jewish star. And I also noticed that as the year went on and October 7th happened, your Jewish star got bigger and bigger. And so I thought that was really, really remarkable and very telling of like what was to come.
Yeah.
So what did you think leadership would be prior to October 7th?
I thought that it would be what it had been for me, which was that I was someone who worked with virtually every student group on campus. I was involved in campus life. I thought that it was about going and trying to understand what different students cared about, problems that people had, problems that that I was having that I wanted to resolve. And so I thought that that was what leadership was stepping up and trying to find ways within my control that I could resolve this. It was about being a liaison between administrators and students. And also, like, the president is kind of an honorary member of the administration. They're an honorary member of the board of trustees. And so that's the most powerful position a student can have, because you have direct access to the people that are able to actually make a change. And so that was what it was for me, was advocating. I'm also very much a action-oriented person. I am not someone who likes to talk very much about what I'm going to do. I like to do it. And so that's what I had been doing. And I thought that I had kind of set that precedent with how I was leading on campus prior. And unfortunately, a lot of those things kind of went out the window after October 7th.
Yeah.
And people forgot about all of that because they were so focused on the thing actually that has nothing to do with our campus. I was like, I can't believe that students here, where we're struggling with housing and we're struggling with, whatever it was on campus, and you're more focused about a foreign conflict that I certainly can't control, you can't control, and yet you're making my entire focus on this thing, which is taking me away from the ability to actually help students.
Yeah.
So
prior to October 7th, did being visibly Jewish in such a public role ever concern you?
No. And again, it didn't really concern me even when I did, just because maybe I was naive before October 7th in a lot of ways. Yeah. And I think that I was just so integrated on campus. And I was like, well, anti-Semitism isn't cool. And like, yeah, there's a bunch of, morons that are going to walk around and always be anti-Israel on a campus. And that's kind of a given. But in terms of actual anti-Semitism and direct targeting of a Jewish student, I was like, well, this is so painfully obvious of how it's bullying and harassment and anti-Semitism that there's no way that we would ever come to this.
Right.
So it was never a concern for me. And then I realized, wow, people are placing an overwhelming emphasis on this. And I don't think that emphasis would be placed on any other minority. And if anything, that minority would be celebrated for being in a leadership role. And that's why I was so confused. I was like, I don't understand it. I'm a female. I'm Jewish. I'm a child of immigrants. Like all of those qualities, you should be so proud that I've made it to this role.
Yep.
And for some reason, you're using it as a tool for my removal from office.
Yeah.
So
October 7th happens. Did you have to like take a beat, or were you just like, I'm in autopilot and you just like went?
Definitely wasn't like that. I mean, October 7th happened. I was logged off. I'm Shomer Shabbos. And so I was offline, and it was a 2-day holiday because it was also Simchat Torah. And so I didn't really get the full picture of what October 7th was until I turned my phone on the 8th. And started scrolling through all of this. And my gut reaction was like, okay, I'm going to post something on my personal social media because I've always been able to express my views. And if anything, this is about humanity. This is not about politics. And so I thought that I would have no problem writing exactly what I wanted to write, saying whatever I wanted to say. And so, I wrote my position on social media, and it became like World War III. Everybody had a problem. It was immediate, like people starting to comment and write different threads and harass me. And so I didn't really get to take a beat because I was like, whoa, like this is really intense. Why is this all coming at me? Are there not other people that are also talking about this? And also like, what's wrong with you? Israel hasn't even responded yet. And even if they have, like, it's justified. So
yeah, because on October 9th, as bodies were still being recovered and identified, and Hamas terrorists were still like terrorizing in Israeli communities, you were already posting and asking for solidarity and comparing people's silence to that of Nazis in World War II. So you were already feeling that 2 days later.
Yeah, because I was realizing as I was scrolling on social media that the only people that were posting about this were Jews. I genuinely thought when I first saw, video footage of October 7th, I was like, okay, like maybe this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. And like, this is going to be the thing that finally gives us the empathy that we need, where people are going to say, okay, you know what? Israel needs to go in. They need to destroy this terrorist organization. Like we finally have woken up and seen this for what it truly is, which is anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And that shockingly did not happen.
So by December, you were posting and you were sort of doing a disclaimer saying, these are my personal views.
Yes.
This is not supported by the university, or I'm not saying this under my like presidency platform. Were you asked to do that?
I wasn't asked, but it was something that was what people were clinging to the most. And so I thought I was like, again, naively, because their problem is not how I'm saying it or what position I'm saying it in. The problem is that I'm saying it at all. But that was the main criticism, is like, within your role, you shouldn't be talking about your political opinions. And again, to me, it wasn't political. It wouldn't be something that you would ever tell, let's say, a Black student in my role that they're not allowed to talk about Black Lives Matter because they're not allowed to get political or stand up for a social justice issue. And so I knew that it was a double standard, but I was just like, how do we reroute people's brains to focus on what I want to get done and not on this issue? Because the whole point of being a Jewish person in office is, yes, to be there for the Jewish students on campus, but it's to be a Jewish leader in a non-Jewish setting. And it's to support, the vast majority of the student body that isn't Jewish. And I was just like, why is this my 90% of my job right now, is me having to go not only defend myself, but defend my Jewish peers. And so I started doing that with the hopes that, okay, if this is their main issue, then fine, I can say it as Tessa Veksler, not as the student body president. It's not going to really change anything. And it didn't. Obviously, it didn't really matter how I did it or how I said it, but nobody asked me to. It was just the overwhelming feedback that I was getting. And I was just like, okay, I'll put in the effort. I'll meet you halfway and acknowledge that I'm fine removing those views, but then you all better do the same thing.
Yeah. So there was a DM that you posted that stopped me in my tracks when I read it. One of the hate DMs that was posted, and it said, "I'm hoping you will be killed and dragged around naked, everyone to laugh at you."
Yeah.
And you wrote, "We are not going anywhere."
Yeah.
And I think, is that when your tagline, like hashtag tagline, was created?
From what I recall, it's totally possible that I said that. But I think it was very much that multicultural center day where I just was like,
Yeah.
I said, I'm not going anywhere. And then I was like, okay, no, but like, we're actually not going anywhere. But it wasn't intentional. It was just kind of like, these people want to push me out of my role and I want them to understand that I'm not going to step down. And it just kind of emerged.
But just getting back to that comment, obviously you can't say that in face to face with someone. You could be arrested for that as a threat. But, someone hiding behind their screen and writing that, your fortitude and resilience. Like,
I knew the girl, by the way. I knew her. Yeah. Went to high school with her. Yeah. I know. It's wild. It's beyond wild.
A girl wrote that too?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what was your support system during this time? Who was there for you?
I think it definitely fluctuated as time went by. So I would say between October 7th and then February, before I started posting about what I was going through on social media, it was my family, my parents, my brother. It was my roommate. I have like a group of very, very close girlfriends who were really, really there for me. And even most of them didn't even live at Santa Barbara at the time. And they were just people that I could call and I could speak to.
Meaning home friends or college friends?
College friends that graduated early,
Okay.
and also a home friend of mine who's not Jewish, who's been incredibly supportive and was just obviously on my side. And she has seen me get bullied before when we were younger. And so I think for her, it was just she's always been there for me. But I think generally speaking, I definitely had allies in student government. I would say my office, a lot of members of my office were very supportive and were there for me and were always checking in on me. And those people are still people I talk to today. I would say there was a feeling of abandonment from the greater campus community. It just felt like a bunch of bystanders that everybody was reading this. It felt like I was like literally in a movie about bullying where it's like everyone's reading the threads. Everyone obviously knows what's happening, but obviously people are choosing not to say anything. And in the Jewish community also, I felt very isolated. I felt like people were walking on eggshells around me. And what I actually wanted was for people to come and say, like, how can we help carry this weight? Or how can we, how can we make a statement? And it wasn't even something that I wanted to be asked. I just wanted people to go and say, like, this attack or this affront on a Jewish student is an attack on our entire community. And that unfortunately didn't happen. And then after I posted on social media, I mean, I gained it felt like nationwide international support because people that I admired, people that I didn't know, powerful people were writing and saying, like, we have your back. And so it definitely made me feel like, okay, I have, whatever I choose to do or whatever challenge I face, I have an army of people behind me. And listen, leadership is always isolating, especially when you're at the top of an organization. It's always going to be isolating because no one will ever understand exactly what you're going through. And I signed up for that and I was so willing to take it on. And if it took me taking most of it to protect my community, then I was totally fine with that because I stepped into this position.
But yet you said some of your community, local community, was not stepping up with you.
It felt like my peers did not. Yes. The Santa Barbara local community and like our Hillel was incredible.
Okay.
Like the staff there, they were remarkable, and the Chabad, of course. But it felt a lot of the time like my peers. And another thing is, like, I have so much sympathy for them as well, because it's like we all got hit with this tragedy, and a lot of kids were Israeli. A lot of people have friends, family, siblings in the army. Everyone was going through their own process. And the truth is, like, we're all inherently selfish human beings, and it's difficult to focus on someone else's plight when you're going through something yourself. And so I totally understand why not everyone had the instinct to be like, okay, let's organize and let's stand up, because for them, and maybe rightfully so, the more important thing was how we need to stand up for Israel on our campus. We need to like be in people's faces about October 7th. And I agree with that. I think it could have happened hand in hand, but I don't hold any strong resentment necessarily toward my peers, but I was definitely at the time, I was very hurt and I felt very alone.
But everything's completely enmeshed. I mean,
yes, I agree.
What was happening to you was
agree.
in direct response. So this affected your friendships and you sort of, I imagine, figured out who was with you and who wasn't, which is a beautiful lesson in and of itself. You can really like clean house, you know? So your parents are Ukrainian, Jewish immigrants who fled the Soviet Union. How has their legacy shaped you today?
I think that maybe this is generally for children of immigrants. I think that we're just raised with a sense of knowing our privilege for being born in this country. And I think that when you know what your parents have been through and how much potential they had to grow and how they took advantage of it. When my family came here, they had essentially nothing, and they really, really worked hard to give me a life even that my brother didn't have when they first immigrated. And so I grew up being like, okay, if my parents could come here with nothing and could traverse Europe to make it here, then I don't have an excuse not to put my best foot forward in every situation and take advantage of every opportunity and privilege that I've been given. And so that definitely shapes my approach in general to life, is that like, I think our ancestors have faced much greater challenges at times than we have. And I actually think my generation is probably the first in American Jewry to be faced with anti-Semitism like this head on in a way that is in ways comparable to our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents. But before October 7th, I didn't really feel like any of us truly understood the gravity of what it was like to be in Europe during the war, or what it was like to be in the Soviet Union, where anti-Semitism was endorsed by the government. And so I just grew up really understanding that and knowing how hard my parents worked. And I was also raised in a lot of ways, I don't want to say with an iron fist, but just like with a lot of discipline and knowing, I don't know, I just built really like thick skin. And that's why a lot of these things rolled off the way that they do.
It just sounds like you were really groomed for this in some, ironic way.
If you ask my parents, they won't take a lot of credit for the way that I am, but just they're like, sometimes we don't think you're related to us because, we're just, my parents and they're so private. They're not like me at all. I'm a very unique situation.
They must be so proud of you.
They definitely are. They are. I think it took them a while. And I think it's more so that as a parent, you're afraid for your kids and you want kids to have stability and you want them to go through less hardship than what you went through. And so I think it's obviously hard to watch. And I totally understand why maybe like their fear for me kind of trumped any pride that they had. But I think that now they've seen kind of the results of it and how much I'm able to handle. And I think that their trust in that has definitely let their pride show through more.
Yeah. Was there ever a moment that you just felt like you were going to break?
Yeah, I would say throughout, like, again, between October and February, that was like every week was very difficult because I had like my family on one hand and a lot of my friends saying like, we don't really know if this is worth it for you. Like, why don't you just step down, enjoy your senior year? And I was very tempted to do that because I was like, this is not what I signed up for. Like, I want to be a leader, and no, I don't want to be the person that steps down, but also I'm miserable and I'm anxious all the time and it's not good for my health. And so I was very much at a breaking point. A lot of the time, I would say December was also a very challenging month because just like it was escalating at that point, because when people realize that you're not reacting maybe to the online stuff, then they start coming in person and they're trying to get something out of you, a reaction out of you. And I wasn't giving it to them. So yeah, it was definitely very, very challenging until February, which was my breaking point, which is when I posted about it on social media.
Yeah. So what kept you?
I knew what I wanted my legacy to be. And I knew that I realized very quickly that this was not about me. It could have been any other Jewish person in my role that was a Zionist, and they would have been treated very similarly. And so to me, it was an example for future Jewish students that maybe wanted to run for this position, that, and also like a sign to those that were trying to push me out that they're capable of doing it. And I didn't want them to walk away with that. And so I kind of tried to see the bigger picture and the greater responsibility in staying, that it was not only my legacy, but it was a legacy for the future of Jewish students at my university.
So was there something you did like for your emotional well-being?
I definitely tried to spend time with friends, and I lived in a beautiful area with a beach, and
that helps.
Getting out of the house was always good, and just talking to people. And I definitely did not handle it well in the beginning, like at all. I like wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping, I was super stressed. Like I didn't really know how to deal with it. And I was so frustrated that the administration's blanket Band-Aid on me was like, oh, we'll give you therapy. And I'm like, I don't want therapy. I want you to like eliminate these people from what they're doing to me, like suspend them, discipline them, whatever you need to do. But that's the solution to the problem, not sending me to a therapist.
And did they?
No.
Nothing.
No. They acted like they were doing it like in the process, but the rulings on every single person were that they didn't violate anything.
What does healing look like for you today? Or are you still so much in the trenches on like the battlefield of all this that you're not at that stage yet?
Doing what I'm doing now. I think that like the biggest FU to these people is succeeding in whatever I'm doing. And so for me, that's definitely been part of it. And I think I'll always have some residual trauma from that experience, but it's been filled with so much joy and opportunity. And I'm just very grateful for where it's led me, and I would do it all over again. And I think that the truth is it's really difficult to start a process of healing when you're still going through it. And that's kind of what you asked. But, you know, like as long as this war is still happening, as long as we have hostages in Gaza, we're not going to be able to even begin processing. And unfortunately, that's kind of been a privilege that the Jewish community has never had. We never have the opportunity to process or to grieve because we always have to be running a million miles an hour trying to defend our own existence. And so that's what happened with October 7th. I felt like I didn't even have the opportunity to process what had just happened to our people because we had to go into defense mode and try to explain why people should have sympathy for the people that were just murdered in cold blood.
Right.
So
you're now in PR.
Yes.
And how is that influencing your feeling about like truth and storytelling and your activism?
PR has definitely taught me the way that you say something obviously really affects public opinion. And I think that something that I tried to maintain in college also was just a level head and presenting myself in a way and speaking with a way that I was like, I'm not going to speak with extreme words. I'm not going to speak out of extreme emotion because that's not what's going to change people's minds. And that's not what's going to tell my story. It's about the words that are coming out of my mouth and the way that I'm able to tell my story in a way that's compelling. And so if anything, that's what I've learned a lot about. And I think that a lot of the time when you're dealing with PR, you're dealing with sometimes people that have like a crisis and they're trying to word it the best way to weasel their way out of it.
Yeah.
But a lot of the time it's someone who's like, let's say starting a business or starting something they're passionate about or taking a different journey in life and they want people to care about it. And so if anything, it's definitely shaped the way in which I communicate. And because I have majority non-Jewish colleagues, even in an office environment, it's been really healthy to see the issues that my coworkers are talking about and the things that they care about. I think that a lot of the time we do get lost in our own bubble and we get so frustrated. We're like, oh, you know, why is nobody talking about Israel? Why is no one talking about the Jewish people and anti-Semitism? But I'm like, well, I'm not talking about a lot of the things that they're talking about and the things that they're reading about because I'm very focused on my own community. And that's not a bad thing, but I think it just makes you realize that there's so many things happening simultaneously in the world. And I don't know, it just kind of opens my mind to the fact that there's a lot going on. And I think also that's true within the anti-Semitism Jewish bubble also, that I think Americans are also very focused on American anti-Semitism And when you zoom out and look globally, I would say the situations in Europe and Australia are significantly worse than they are here.
Yeah.
And I just think that that's something a lot of the time that we're unaware of because we have these blinders on. And so for me, again, it's just been really good to be in an environment where my eyes are being opened to the other things that people care about and the way that non-Jews communicate with each other about these issues, and how can I reach a broader audience by telling our story in a bit of a different way.
Yeah, so I want to ask you about that. Are you reaching people beyond this bubble?
I think I am, and that's based on, messages that I've received from non-Jews that are following along. I don't think it's as many as I would like, and I think a lot of that is also, over the next year trying to reach a broader audience beyond social media. Like, I think that news broadcasts and writing op-eds for non-Jewish newspapers, that type of thing, like that has the power to reach a lot of people. But on social media, people follow you that they specifically care about what you're talking about. And it's just not the nature of a non-Jewish person to care about Jewish advocacy work.
So why do you think they would read an article?
Because I think that if it's in the media that they're consuming on a day-to-day basis, it's not seen as, it's presented to you on a Jewish platter. It's presented to you by a Jewish author that's stating their opinion on an issue, but in an outlet that you read every day. Like, I think...
Yeah. Like, who's going to host that platform, though?
Well, it can't be us. It can't be us.
Exactly.
But I think, like, the Free Press is a really good example of this. I think, like, I wish that the New York Times would platform more of our voices. And unfortunately, we've been very disappointed by them this year. But we've definitely seen it. The New York Sun has this a lot, the New York Post. But yeah, we definitely need to improve in that category and platforming people on the mainstream. Like, I think that a lot of us are not very focused on our humility in all of this. And I think that's a big problem, is that you're going to be put on a pedestal by the Jewish community because they're proud of you and we're like an extended family. And they're obviously very proud that, I'm stepping up, and that's beautiful and needed. And I'm so honored by all the love that I'm receiving from my community. It's what matters to me the most. But if you truly care about our cause, you need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, and you have to be able to step out of that and know that you're not going to be always surrounded by an audience that adores you and an audience that's on your side.
Yeah.
So you have to challenge yourself to be in front of those that might challenge you, that might disagree with you. And that's maybe not something that everyone's meant for, but it's also something I think that we kind of enable within the Jewish world. And that's a longer conversation I've been seeing a lot on social media these past few weeks about Hasbara and like how the Jewish influencer network is working and who are we rewarding for what kind of behavior. And so it's definitely something that's been on my mind more recently as well. And I've been connected with people, non-Jewish people, that I think will also kind of help educate me on how to get in front of a different audience, because it's something that I really want to do.
Give me some examples of audiences you would love to get in front of that you sort of don't have access to right now.
I think that one example would be, I would love to work more with the Black community. And I think that I have a lot of mentors that are really passionate about the Black and Jewish relationship in this country. And I think that we were really at our strongest when the Black community and the Jewish community were partners. And I think that right now there's a division that's been created in this country between those two communities. And I think part of it is also that the American public often shapes what we're going through and anti-Semitism as a racial issue and about like a white oppressor type of issue. And that's really not the case. And so there's so much more that we have in common as communities. And I think, again, part of it is on us and part of it is on the communities that we want to work with. But it's also the role of the Jewish community to be able to say, we're going through this, but there are also other communities that are going through discrimination in this country, let's say, or they're going through different plights. And we have to, as it's difficult, right? Because I feel like we're always the ones that are being turned away and we're always the ones that are being left standing alone. But I believe very strongly in that we always talk about how Jews are unique, right? We always say like Jews are a very special people. Look at how we're able to overcome things. Look at the way that we carry ourselves. Look at our moral army, whatever we say. So if we say that, then we have to behave that way in every sense of the word. And I'll give you an example of like on college campuses. Like for me, I faced a lot of rejection by groups that I used to work with. And I felt very abandoned. I was very confused. I was like, okay, I don't understand why all these women's groups and why all these minority groups who I've been working with, who they obviously know I care about them and I care about the issues they care about, why they're abandoning me all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And I had Jewish students that got elected into student government after me come and ask me, like, what do we do about these communities? Do we give up? And I was like, absolutely not. You email them every single month and you say, are you ready to work with us? Because that's what we do. No matter how many times we get turned away, no matter how many times we, get stepped on, and it sucks. It's not something that you would expect out of any other community. But I believe that we are unique, and I believe that we're equipped to handle this challenge of being constantly turned away, because eventually, and I have seen this, that if you approach people enough and you approach them in a way of kindness and openness and wanting to support them, that there are instances in which they meet you halfway. But sometimes it's just a really gradual process. And so,
yeah. But what about all the marginalized communities and all the people that the Jews did stand beside? I mean, you've named, like civil rights and LGBTQ community and pretty much like all minorities that Jews have stood by. And then we stand alone now. How do you respond to that? You think it's okay that they've turned their backs on us?
Not
we should
at all.
turn back to them? Like,
No.
At what point do we say, enough is enough? We're just going to like focus on our own survival right now.
There's two things I would say to that. The first thing is that the anti-Israel movement has managed to incorporate these minorities into their,
exactly,
and so that's part of the problem, is that we kind of need to employ a similar strategy to engage these groups, because we all know on this side of the aisle that what they're standing for is the antidote to what they need.
Exactly.
So that's part of it, is that not giving up on them, but rather showing them and saying, you're really not standing with the movement that stands for you.
Interesting.
That's one thing. And second, I believe that if we want to continue existing in America and thriving in America, thinking that we can do this by ourselves is very naive. We make up a very small percentage of the global population. We make up a very small percentage of the American public. And so as much as, yes, I'm much more comfortable going and staying with my community and saying, let's focus on ourselves and we don't really need anybody and like, screw these people. That's an easier approach, and an approach that I often feel like inside that I would like to take. But I think we would regret if we didn't try to grow our allies, because eventually the people that you're seeing screaming on the streets are going to be eligible to run for office.
But do you want those people as your allies?
Not those specific people, but I think that the extremes,
or are they even capable of being allies, I should really say.
Not the extremes, but I think that the majority of America is not extreme.
Yeah. They just scream the loudest.
Of course. Yeah. And by the way, we see this the most like on the coast, but in middle America, which is something we really don't focus on in this country. Like, we don't focus in our movement on the middle, because we're so focused on trying to quiet down these extreme people that are turning a lot of people against us. And again, I work with a lot of different kinds of people, and I have the pleasure of having a lot of non-Jewish friends that are allies, and they often give me feedback in terms of like, listen, I think that like, sometimes our community feels that like the Jewish community feels this particular way, or like, they feel that the majority of my community has abandoned them. And so now they've turned their backs on all of us, or things. And a lot of the time, again, I'm saying this and I'm like, well, that's not reasonable. And that's not really fair, because we could say the same thing to everybody else. Everyone's turned their backs on us, and we marched with them and we were there for them. And now we don't matter and we're irrelevant and nobody wants to stick their neck out for us. But again, like, I'm not a pessimist. I don't believe that gets us anywhere. And so I don't try to see this as like, okay, well, everyone hates us, there's no improvement here. Because if that's how we see things, then we should just all move to Israel, and like, then our lives in the diaspora are over. But I don't want that to happen. I think that we deserve to be here. I think that this is a large part of what it means to be Jewish, is our diasporic identity. And so that's something that I want to do in my lifetime. I want to work on these relationships.
So does that require Jews to take the higher moral ground?
Yes. And I think we always have. We always have. And like, it just makes me really sad, like, when I see the extremes like of our community that are like, screw these people, because I understand the sentiment. Really, I do. And like, trust me, like from being on a campus where people are constantly saying the worst possible things. And like, I'm usually half the age of the people that are screaming this. It's very much like, if I just went through this on the ground and you're like comfortably living in your apartment in New York City and, you know, you have a job and you have a family and you're saying, screw these people, then like, you're basically kind of saying F you to me, because I've been sitting and I've been trying so hard and I'm actually facing it on the ground, and you're turning away people that actually might want to work with someone like me. It changes like peer to peer. Like, I think on college campuses, we have more of an opportunity to work with our peers depending on the campus. But I felt very much, especially toward the end when I was realizing who my allies were, like a lot of young women at UCSB were really approaching me and saying like, this is bullying, full out bullying, and it's unfair and it could be any one of us. And I was just like, okay, like people really do sometimes see the humanity in all of this. And I think that, again, it's just this like frightened majority that don't know what to say and they don't want to be excluded. And I don't think that that's an excuse, but those are the people that we need to go to and say, we understand that it's really difficult because we're facing it, but we'd love to just talk to you even behind a closed door and answer any questions that you may have.
So have you done that?
I have, yeah.
And has it worked?
Definitely. I think if you invest time and you don't get offended, like I think a lot of the time people are afraid to ask questions in anything, like on any political issue in America right now, people are afraid to question because they don't want to get canceled for asking the wrong thing. But curiosity is what makes you an intelligent human being. It's how you learn a variety of perspectives, and we shouldn't shame people for being curious or for asking the wrong things. And there's a lot of people that I met in college where they literally never met a Jewish person until they came to college. And I'm just like, I don't blame, like I've had people come and say like the wildest stereotypes of all time. And instead of being like, I can't believe you think that, you're a moron, I'm like, okay, you didn't know anyone. So do you want to meet me and my Jewish friends and see that we actually don't have horns growing out of our heads? Like, I'm happy to, you know? So it's just like, sometimes it's coming from a place of understanding and not kind of like buckling down to the extremes. Like those people, like, well, we should address them, but like keep them on the periphery when it comes to trying to build relationships with allies.
If you could reach the non-Jews and bring them in as allies, what would be like the one thing that you wish you could get across to them?
I think that sometimes the most compelling thing is that hatred against us is a sign that society is failing. And so like an affront to our humanity should be an affront to all of your humanity as well. And I think that we treat every other issue like this, right? Because if any group is being marginalized in this country, then we should see that as this could also happen to me. And this is a part of us. And this is a part of our failure to do things in a way where people are not being discriminated against. And so I think I just want them to feel like they are responsible. They're equally responsible in combating this issue. And it's not, you know, anti-Semitism isn't a Jewish issue. Racism is not a Black issue. It's all of our collective responsibility. And so I think that, again, like seeing it, I just met a non-Jewish student, who's an ally. And he said, people just don't get it, that it starts with you. And then it continues throughout, you know, all of these minority communities until you basically reach like what was Nazi Germany, because it didn't end with the Jews at all.
So if their response was, no, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm anti-Zionist, how do you respond to that?
I would ask them, what do you think Zionism means? And I would say my definition of Zionism, and the actual definition of Zionism, is that it's the belief that Jews have a right to self-determine in their native homeland. I would say Jews are from Judea, where there's historical or archaeological evidence that is the modern state of Israel, is Judea. And so we are indigenous to that land, and we have a right to have this land be created. I think that's also like one of our greatest problems, is that we justify the existence of Israel through the Holocaust, which is like, yes, it might have like opened the window for us as to like how we finally got our own state, but that is not why we have a right to be there. We have a right to be there because we are from that land and we've always existed in that land. So that's part of it, is just trying to explain what is Zionism, why do we have a right to be there, and how that doesn't take away anybody else's right to be there. And then I would say, like, again, there's kind of like this 3D method, the double standards, demonization, delegitimization of Israel, which becomes anti-Semitism. And I would say, do you hold any other country to the same standard as what you're expecting of Israel?
Right.
Are you demonizing this country because it's a Jewish state? And why are you not saying the same of the terrorist organization that committed these atrocities in the first place?
Right.
Why are you watering down this entire argument by saying Israel doesn't deserve to exist? Because in any other foreign conflict in the world, would you say that China or Russia or any of these other foreign adversaries that they don't deserve to exist? No, you wouldn't water down any of these other arguments to, let's just eliminate the country as a whole. Yep. So I would lay it out that way. And again, if they're, a curious, intelligent human being, which I do think a lot of people are, then maybe they will think about it.
Yeah.
And I will say, like, a lot of the time, that's how it is. Because if you're one Jewish state in the world and you're surrounded by 23 Muslim countries, and your problem is with the one Jewish state and not with the Muslim countries where people or whatever, women are being murdered and gay people are being thrown off buildings, then to me, what would you call that?
I mean, Tess, I'm so glad that I'm on your side of the aisle, because going against you could just like bury anybody. So looking forward, how do you hope to be remembered? Not professionally, but in terms of who you are as a person?
I would like to be thought of someone who, again, like for me, having a level head and having grace and poise, and I want people to see that in the face of idiots and in the face of extremism and in the face of hatred, that I never responded or succumbed to that. That's something that I want to be remembered by. And I want to have a legacy of being a Jewish person that, future generations of Jews look up to. And I think that's what I hope for this entire Jewish generation. I want future generations to look at us and be proud of the way that we handled ourselves and not be like, oh my gosh, we made a huge mistake, or, we were carrying ourselves in a way that's not up to the standard of who we are. And so that's how I try to live my life. And my goal was not this. Like, I didn't post on social media thinking that it was going to garner like this type of attention. And it's more so, I just want people to know that I see this as a privilege. And I think that there's a lot of people that are doing very similar things, and they just didn't have the luck of getting maybe discovered or getting such a large following. And so I treat it as a gift every single day. And I tried to be humble in the process and to learn, while I'm doing all of this. So hopefully that'll be my legacy.
Tessa, you are something special. You are wise beyond your years and humble. And I just see such greatness ahead for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you and good luck. Thanks for listening. For more, you can visit Instagram at Grace for Impact Podcast. If you enjoyed the conversation, please follow the show, leave a rating and review. See you next time.
Hold on through the